Some of you who have been following our journey on Instagram and Facebook may know that we moved house about a year and a half ago now. So we were hoping that Fern Cottage would be our forever home. We absolutely loved rewilding the 5 acres over about 15 years that I lived there, and the children grew up there and we planted our forest garden. But unfortunately, when it came to buying our section of the small holding, we just couldn't make it work. We couldn't split the property up in the way that meant we would be able to buy our bit. So in the end, we had to move. So we've ended up moving to Keighley, so just down the road from where we were before. And now, instead of a stone farm cottage, we are in a 1960s semi, which has been quite a change, but actually we have really embraced this. One of the things we really like is not having drafts in the winter. It's been really lovely and cozy, having big picture windows, so being able to have some really great views of the garden. And things like we've bought our polytunnel that we had up the hill at our previous place, and we put it right in our back garden, so just a few footsteps away from the kitchen, which has made a huge difference in terms of how much attention we can give the crops in there and the kind of things that we can grow. So we're now at the back end of the polytunnel. There's this giant rock that's in the way. That was here when we got the house, and we just decided to leave it there, and that is how we decided where to place the polytunnel, because we literally couldn't put it any further towards the back of the garden. But we don't mind, it's a nice feature and somewhere to put your tea, so it's less likely to get full of soil, which is handy. And then I've been slowly, just over the last few weeks, planting up the forest garden. Some of the plants in here are from the forest garden border that I had at the Harrogate Flower Show last spring. So some plants were really just healed in, so this area hasn't been designed as such yet. It's just really a holding ground for a lot of plants till I decide where they go. Another thing that I really like about this garden is it's more of a relatable size. So whilst it's been a real privilege to have had whole 5 acres to rewild and to spend time in, actually we were only cultivating quite a small area. So the size of the garden that we have now is much more relatable to anyone who has an average size garden, or even an allotment, because our garden's more or less the size of an average allotment, maybe just a little bit longer. So I think the way that we are gardening now is a bit more relatable to most people and how they grow. In this area of the garden we have created annual vegetable beds, and really none of this existed about 4 weeks ago, and we were about to go on holiday and had to get all of our modules and seedlings into the ground. So we had a couple of days of just working non-stop, and we've used these pallet collars, so they sort of pack down flat, but you can fold them out, and we filled them with a mixture of well-rotted compost and some leaves and grass that we mixed together at mowing time end of last year. So not fully rotted, but actually the plants are doing really well in that. So we just popped those up and filled them up, and we've planted all sorts of different things into there. When we were thinking about where to move and what kind of house to buy, we were really concentrating on just buying the biggest garden that we could afford. That was our main priority. The house that we've ended up with is quite what I think of as quite an ugly house. Inside it's got a lovely layout, but what totally sold it to us was the garden. I think one thing that we've really enjoyed is we had our first winter here, winter just gone, and even though it rained a lot, it was very wet, very windy, we had sunshine all winter, which made just such a huge difference, both to what we can grow now, but also just in terms of how it makes you feel to wake up to winter sunshine coming through the windows, which we never had at the last house because we lost the sun from about October and it didn't come back until March. So winters used to be really dark and depressing. So it's been really great to move somewhere much sunnier. This area at the top of the garden is yeah, probably one of the least developed areas so far. Mostly we've just cleared things and we have put down some bark. We had a giant pile of bark from when we had the trees cut down. And so this area will be the outdoor cooking area and the fire pit and socialising space, which I'm really excited about getting up and running for this summer. If it ever stops raining, we might actually be able to have some friends around and have a fire. One of the challenges we do have here is now we're living on top of a hill and it gets quite windy up here, so there's certain things we won't be able to grow, and we're working hard on planting shelter belts and looking at how to put windbreaks in within the garden itself as well, just to try and help slow down the wind speed and create a real microclimate, because we really do get plenty of sun. Of course, some areas look better than others, so this is one of the areas yet to be developed. It's currently somewhere to store all of the plants that we haven't quite made room to plant yet. Some of them looking a bit hungry and desperate to be out of pots. But I think the reality is we've been here nearly 2 years. I think we moved in a year and a half ago, and we had to do a lot more work on the house than expected. So not all of the garden is looking quite as we'd want, but I think really we just want to enjoy it and to not rush. So I'm quite happy really if there's a few areas still to finish off. Well, the polytunnel was really quite hard work to get up, particularly because we ended up doing it on a very windy day, which is not advisable, but sometimes you've organised help and so that's just the day that it has to be done. But I'm really pleased that we put in that effort and went through all that pain, because the tomatoes are looking really great. Andrew has grown a mix of heritage varieties and also some of his own tomatoes that he's bred, some that are bred for cooler climates for the north and to grow as dwarf tomatoes. So there's all sorts of different varieties growing in here. I'll list those in the comments. And our plan had been to document our progress right from the very beginning at the garden. So I have some snippets that we've filmed over the last year and a half, but in general we've just been so busy doing loads of exciting work projects and getting the house up and running that I've never actually got round to putting them all together into a video. But now I'm hoping we will be putting out a video every week, updates on the progress of the garden, some sort of information on how we've designed the garden and plants that we're growing and how we're going to use those as well. So fingers crossed this is the first of many.